Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Politics FitzU on Franklin Pierce Global. I'm Paul Lambert, joined by Caitlin Acciardo, Dante Camacho, Casey Eldred, and a very special guest. He's the CEO of Red Apple Group in New York City, also owner of Gristestis Foods, the largest supermarket chain in Manhattan. And, of course, he's entered the world of politics more recently, ran for mayor of New York City as a Republican back a few years ago, and he hosts a talk show at 970 AM and just finished purchasing WABC in New York. I want to welcome to the podcast John Catsimatidis. Great to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I guess between my age and your ages, we learned from each other. You said I ran as a Republican, which is true, but I ran as a Republican liberal, which is equivalent to a Democrat. And I was originally a Bill Clinton Democrat. Bill Clinton was one of my best friends. He still is. And I worked on his operations back in the 1990s, I guess. And I enjoyed him very much. And he was one of the smartest guys I ever met. Brilliant. But the Democratic Party has changed. And I wasn't comfortable with President Barack Obama. I respected him as the president. But I wasn't comfortable with his stance. I also represent the Greek Orthodox Church. I report to the Patriarch, which is the equivalent of the Pope. Under President Barack Obama, 400,000 Christians died in the Middle East. Since President Trump, very few died. It has to be noted. And, you know, a lot of people were supporting Muslim refugees, etc. I have nothing against them. But I also tell my friends, or gay friends in New York, if you were in Iran or Iraq and you were gay, they'll throw you off the roof. Everybody should know that. You go, boop. And as the world turns.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a wild change of events since Mr. Trump became president. Katie, I want to go over to you because the American dream is such a big thing. I know you want to get started on that.
So we've done so much research on you, and we've noticed that you have really embodied the American dream. And while we were in Iowa, we were talking to many voters who were talking to us about how they felt the American dream was declining. We've had multiple conversations where we've talked about we think the American dream is evolving. It's not the same as it was, but it's not gone. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the American dream, maybe how you've lived it and how you feel if it's still obtainable.
I think it's still obtainable. My two grandfathers came to America approximately 1913 during the big wave where a lot of Greeks and a lot of Italians came. And they left my father in the, how do you say it? The old country, to take care of his three sisters and his mother. And he worked by himself in a lighthouse. I'll show you the picture later. In a lighthouse to earn a few lira for the Italian government, to earn a few lira to buy some bread and provisions for his mother and his three sisters. And right after World War II, the Brits punished Italians for being on the wrong side, and they took those islands away from the Italians and gave it back to the Greeks. So it was part of Italy from 1904 to March 1947. So I tell people I was conceived an Italian. I was born a Greek. But if you do my DNA test, I'm 28% Italian and 45% Macedonian and Greek. And I respect them all. But my father got married after World War II. My mother was originally born in Constantinople. They were chased out by the Turks. They used to be in Constantinople. That's what I call Istanbul. There was 3 million Greeks back in the early 1900s. Now there's 3,000. So, you know, the refugees have just pushed out. And my grandfather left in the middle of the night with his family and went down to the islands of Nisidos, which is part of the North Chinese Islands, the islands we were talking about. And my father met my mother, got married, and came to America. And like I said, my grandfathers came in 1913, looking for the streets paved with gold. It took me 100 years, so I found it finally.
Now I got to ask, how proud does that make you, Tino? To kind of do you see that as like an honor to your family who started over here over 100 years ago now to be in such a success story in the city of New York?
People should respect their forefathers. I respect my grandfathers. I respect my father and my mother. And the Greek government did a stamp in my honor, in the honor of my family, back in 2015, 2016. And I wasn't going to do it. And then somebody said to me, don't do it for yourself. Do it in honor of your family. And guess what? I said, you're right, and that's why I did it.
There's so many families in the spot that you have been in. What would you give the kids right now working double jobs just to help their family pay for meals? What advice would you give to them so that they can reach their full potential, reach a better life?
Only in America, land of opportunity. Don't listen to, pardon my language, the BS. People say, oh, it's different. It's not different. You pick your target and you work hard, and guess what? If you work hard and go to work every day, keep your nose clean, you can succeed in America. So that's my message.
Thank you.
To the young ones.
So, Mr. Catsimatidis, we wanted to ask you a little bit about immigration and kind of the American Dream theme past that we've been discussing so far. And my question for you was, we saw immigration be such a hot topic in the 2016 election, and I'm sure we're going to see that energy come back around. What do you think about, our current immigration system? Where do you see it going in the future? And what do you think is a good system for the U.S. to have?
I am an immigrant.
Right.
I believe in immigration. But when my father came over, his two brothers signed a document that if he didn't pay the rent, they would have to pay the rent. So my father worked two jobs. He didn't speak English right. He spoke fluent Italian, fluent Greek. So my father only could work as a busboy in Manhattan, in New York, for a restaurant because he didn't speak English enough. But on weekends, he worked 7 days a week. He'd go over to Astoria, where there was a lot of Italian restaurants, and work as a waiter Saturdays and Sundays to earn so he doesn't embarrass himself and his family and ask for his brothers for money. So he worked hard. He always believed in a good education for his son. So he made sure I got a good education. And I think I wanted them, I never wanted to do anything to disrespect them or disrespect the family. Aaron, did I answer your question? I lost track. Mm-hmm. Oh, so immigration. Finished. I believe in immigration, but I believe in immigration the same way my father came over, with responsibility. I don't believe in immigration we cannot save the whole world. You can't just open up the borders and say, come on in. I believe in immigration, that people could help the American citizens. I don't believe we should bring criminals in. We should make sure no criminals come in. And this amnesty thing, it's all, pardon my language, BS. It's, they'll say anything and do anything, and we don't need people to come in and become a burden on American citizens. We need people that come in like my father or your forefathers and work hard and help build America. And so I believe in immigration, but I don't want any criminals, background checks, and we just can't just open the borders and say, come on in. We can't save the whole world. And we're going to hurt our country. We're going to hurt our citizens, our current citizens. To what? You can't save the whole world. You can't have 1 million people just come in and say, come in and save us. You know, I'm going to take a left turn, or a right turn, whatever you like. The reason for Brexit, do you know the reason for Brexit? The real reason for Brexit is Britain got invaded. 62% of Britain, of London, is non-Brit. So finally, the Brits came up to here. These people were just coming in through the EU and say, here we are, we're here. Clothe us, feed us, educate us, take care of us in the hospitals, and we're just going to hang out. The Brits finally said, enough is enough. Britain is for the Brits. And do we want immigrants? Yes. We want immigrants that are going to work hard, not immigrants that are going to become burdens on the rest of the British citizens. That was the reason for Brexit. And I don't think I talk about it on my radio show, I don't think people realize that. Next.
Yes, sir. Mr. Catsimatidis, I'd like to ask you, as somebody who's been involved in New York City politics, ran for mayor in 2013, New York City is a unique city in that almost no other city in the United States has as many mayors either flirting with the idea of running for president or running for president. We've had about 5 different mayors in the past few decades, 3 decades, that have either run or said that they want to run for president.
I don't think you've ever had a mayor of New York City that ran for president and won.
And won. That's the thing.
No, 0.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
A few governors, Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, maybe another one or so.
Yeah. You've New York City mayors that run, but they usually get denied. And that's the thing. What is it about the New York City mayor's office, whether it's Bill de Blasio, Michael Bloomberg in this campaign, Rudy Giuliani in the early 2000s, what is it about the New York City mayor's office that kind of inspires mayors to run for president? And also, what do you think about Mike Bloomberg's kind of campaign in general, the strategy of his campaign?
I think Michael Bloomberg screwed up. I was with Michael Bloomberg at one of the Al Smith dinner, and I convinced him that he's 77 years old, 78. He had a ton of money. He was bored. Nobody paid attention to him. He was a nobody. I said, why don't you run, spend a few bucks, so you'll leave a little less to the kids. And I think 2 weeks later he announced. So maybe I had a little bit of influence.
Just a little bit.
But he screwed up. When I saw him freeze at that first debate, it reminded me of Jeb Bush. And I had a lot of respect for Jeb. And, Trump hit him with a right hook, and Jeb just stood there and said, what do I do now? And you can't. You want to run for president. You want to run for mayor. You better be sharp on your feet, and you better be able to respond. Otherwise, don't run.
Is that the Mayor Bloomberg that you knew as mayor? Was he really? Because I agree. He seemed weak in those debates.
In addition, he changed his platform. Says, "I apologize. I didn't mean to have stop and frisk," which is all nonsense. As a matter of fact, the way I would have said it, yes, we had stop and frisk, but it saved the people that it saved is the African Americans in the poor neighborhoods. That's where the murders were taking place. That's where the murders are taking place in Chicago. So if you can take those guns away from those people in those neighborhoods, God bless. Because it's not killing the people on Fifth Avenue. It's not killing the people on Park Avenue. It's killing the African Americans that want to work hard and have a life. So I think if he were just honest and said that, people would say, yeah, you're right. So an honest answer is better than a BS answer.
So,
Well, Katie, do you want to fire off one more?
Whatever you want, I'm here.
We're gonna.
I
You
just
got me all excited.
I just have another question back on the immigration. At Franklin Pierce University, a lot of our professors foster an environment where they want deep thinking and critical thinking. And we talk a lot about like ways to enhance the American dream. And on immigration, you were talking about like the old system and the sponsorship system where you had someone sponsor you to come over. How do you feel about that? Do you feel
That's
that
one system. But I also belong to the New York City Partnership that's encouraged the president to bring in more immigrants that we need. You know, under our current system, we educate a lot of immigrants overseas, and then we say goodbye. If they're immigrants that are qualified, if they're immigrants that are going to be loyal to America, I think they should stay. And also, if there's a list somewhere, if Bank America or IBM says, we need 1,000 of these kind of technicians, open up the borders. Bring in 1,000 of those technicians. So let's get immigrants that America needs and are willing to work for America and are loyal to America.
So you would not like a sponsorship system in America?
No, you can have that too.
Okay.
As long as they're people that are going to come to work, not come to join the welfare roll.
Right.
And now I've got to also ask. You said you were a big Bill Clinton supporter, one of the smartest guys you knew, and
I knew him very well.
yeah. And what changed? Now you're a supporter of the President Trump.
Well, I knew Bill Clinton, and he was a great president. I think the Democratic Party has changed. I know Donald Trump for 40 years. And I'm not saying we were the friendliest guys in the world. I didn't go dinner with him. We're both New Yorkers. We both did the same charities. But I was impressed that he had the courage. He had the courage to fight for America. He had the courage to stand up against the Red Chinese that was screwing us badly. He had the courage to go to North Korea. He had the courage with Iran. I was on one of the television channels last week, and it was the day after the debates, the first debate with Bloomberg. Even though Bloomberg did badly, I said, and I shouldn't have said it the way I said it, I said, well, you had 6 or 7 people up there, other than Mike Bloomberg, who I have a lot of respect for, and is a businessman and knows how to compete, knows how to negotiate. Which ones are the other 5? I'm sorry I said this, because I shouldn't have said it. Which one of the other 5 clowns would you trust to negotiate with China, North Korea, Iran? They don't have a clue. They don't have a clue how to be tough enough to win the battle for America.
Now, what a lot of voters voted for President Trump for was that authenticity that he kind of brought to the table. You said you knew him for 40 years. Is that the same Donald Trump up at the debate stage that's now president as he was when you knew him?
Same guy. You know why I'm still friends with him?
Why is that?
I never did a deal with him.
I got to ask you, John, because, I mean,
I'm here to work for you guys. Keep going.
in relation to the American dream, I think it's a bit hard to access the American dream, to get the American dream when you're in a quarantine. So talking about the coronavirus, I mean, the Dow has gone down because of this. NASDAQ's gone down because of this. I mean, this makes investments hard. This makes production hard. As a businessman and, as somebody who's involved in politics, what do you do to kind of weather the effects of an epidemic like this when this is going on? How do you keep business thriving? What is your thoughts?
You have to have a lot of courage. I would not want to be in a cruise ship business right now. I would not want to be in the theater business right now. I would not want, I don't want to go in subways. So I don't think it's as bad as the cable channels are making it, but it doesn't mean that we should not be careful. So I think we should take all precautions and be careful. And, it may blow itself over. You never know. A lot of the flu type situations that we had in America, when the spring comes and the weather warms up, it just blows itself over. It could happen. I'm hoping, because we don't need any major problems. So I'm hoping for the best. No more questions?
No. Oh, there's plenty more. How do you think the president's handling the coronavirus situation?
I think he did a great job. I think he was criticized when a few weeks ago he monitored everybody coming in from China at San Francisco Airport, at Los Angeles Airport, at JFK Airport. He monitored everybody, and all of a sudden people were criticizing for him. But I think that helped a great deal, not allowing people with possible disease to come in. So he had the courage to say, let's do it.
John, in the last few presidential campaigns, this year, 2016, we've seen kind of this growing trend of wealthy candidates, whether that's Trump, Steyer, Bloomberg, wealthy candidates self-funding their campaigns. And that comes with some criticisms. That comes with the criticism of, they're rich, maybe they have their own interests and they're kind of trying to jump into the campaign to enrich themselves more than the other candidates. But then there's also the argument, kind of contrary to that, the argument of wealthy candidates who can self-fund their campaigns. They're actually more outside the establishment of their parties, whichever respective party they're in, Republican or Democrat. They're actually more outside the establishment because they have the money to be able to fund their own campaigns. They don't need to take money from PACs and super PACs.
Yes, but they have money to start a campaign and get it started. But if you don't have sex appeal, if you don't communicate properly with the audience or with the people you're trying to address, you're going to fail, like Bloomberg did. Mm-hmm. And Bloomberg was mayor for 12 years. He should have had a better handle on things. So it didn't matter. And so I think what I think is wrong, what they're doing in New York City, they're taking taxpayer money and giving it to candidates. In other words, if you have raised $250 from, I forget the number, from 200 candidates, mm-hmm. they're going to fund you 8 times that amount. Taxpayer money without even asking me. Why are you taking my taxpayer money, giving it to that person to run? I could understand if you ask my permission and check it off on the tax return. Yes, I agree to use my taxpayer money to fund these people. I can understand that. But just take the money, taxpayer money, and fund these people? Wrong. And right now, we have a big problem in New York State. They passed some stupid laws. You have to be extra stupid to pass these laws. Bail reform. And that means they didn't talk to the judges. They didn't talk to the DAs. They didn't talk to the police departments. You commit a crime. No bail. Go home. And you have enough you go home before the policeman gets to fill out the paperwork. And you could commit another crime that afternoon. And you still no bail. And it's wrong. And the mayor and the city council passed a law. They're going to close Rikers Island and take all these criminals, throw them on the streets of New York. Crime in the month of January went up 20%. Now, what are we going to wait for? We're going to wait for somebody to get killed? Because these people are being thrown in the streets. They have no money. They have no job. So what are they going to do? If you're walking in the wrong spot, they're going to hit you over the head, take your money.
So I have a question. It's going to change the direction of the conversation.
It's okay.
But we've been walking through your office, and we've seen all your pictures with friends and colleagues. And can you tell us a little bit about how you actually can make friends in the political world, not enemies?
I listen like my radio show. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a liberal. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I allow everybody on my radio show to express their opinion and let the audience see if they like them or not. And I've got to meet a lot of people. You'll see pictures out there of Cesar Chavez, who led the union movement in California for the farm workers. You see pictures out there of Fidel Castro, who built a new Greek Orthodox church in Havana, and he paid for it. You see pictures of Bill Clinton. You see pictures of a little, from everybody. I think communications is number one. Being able to communicate with people, express your opinion.
And what do you feel about this new coin term, fake news? Do you feel
it exists? It exists.
And how can the media
horrible.
get rid of it?
I don't know. It exists. That I think in the old days, where people with gray hair used to be, like Walter Cronkite used to be called the most trusted man in America. Well, I think there's such a thing as whatever the news is should be reported as news. You want to report it as your opinion, put a flashing light over your head. My opinion, my opinion. So let's separate my opinion from the real news.
Is there hope for that?
I'm going to work towards it. Like I said, we just bought WABC Radio, and all I'm interested in is telling the truth.
Awesome.
I wanted to ask you to take it back a little bit to what you were talking about just a few minutes ago. So today, the political environment, it's always described as partisan. It's always described as divisive. Do you think that, we would be in a better place in American politics if everybody kind of took a page out of your book and just, let whoever they are, whether they're a liberal or a conservative, kind of voice their opinion and take it in?
I think if you put everybody around the round table, it's better than waking up and look it up and say, what did Trump say? Did Trump say this table is brown? It must be blue. It's silly what's going on. And it's silly what Senator Schumer did the other day, and threatened Supreme Court justices. You hope Supreme Court justices just do the right thing and interpret the laws. And that's their job. And they shouldn't. I will tell you something that you guys don't know. Are you ready? Congressmen and senators can lie on the floor of the Congress, and they're not guilty. They're allowed to lie. L-I-E, lie. Now, you know what they got Roger Stone? An acquaintance, not my friend of mine. They got him on lying to Congress. It's okay for them to lie to every person in the American public, but for him to tell a lie, oh. You know what they did? 67 years old. He never got convicted of a crime in 67 years. Had no record. The FBI sent in a SWAT team, 29 federal agents. They sent in helicopters. They sent in he had a river or whatever behind his house. They sent frogmen in. They spent $125,000 arresting this man. And you know why? At the same time, they called in CNN to film the whole thing. It's horrible. What went on in Washington the last few years is a crime. And I think the people that committed, look, justice for all. That's what we grew up on. And it should be justice for all.
Now, you mentioned that, not that the FBI, that CNN and the FBI both knew that the arrest was coming. The president's talked about the
By the way, my chief of staff, who you met, was the FBI man in charge of the New York area,
Right.
in charge of Philadelphia, in charge of Harrisburg.
But do you think that President Trump talks about the deep state, and
It exists.
It exists.
It exists.
Yeah,
It's horrible. Mm-hmm. It's horrible, and it should not exist. What happened, and I don't want to make this political because I'm not political, but under President Obama, what happened was just before he left office, after 8 years, he took 2,000 of his people and made them civil servants and made them permanent government employees. That way, the next president couldn't fire them. Again, that's horrible.
Want to go with
Equal justice.
Yeah.
John, on the question of, political partisanship in 2020, some people say, Democrats can't fund Republicans, Republicans can't fund Democrats. If you're a Republican, you got to support Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you got to support Democrats. But you have helped organize a number of Republicans for Governor Cuomo events. What has the current governor done to kind of earn your support?
Well, up to now, he was a middle-of-the-road Democrat, which I am pro-common sense Democrats. I am pro-common sense Republicans. But when he was scared stiff, and he was scared stiff that the progressives were going to attack him when he ran for his re-election, guess what bill he signed? This bail reform bill to throw the criminals in the streets. Mayor de Blasio, who I know for 25 years, guess what bill he signed? Close down Rikers Island, throw all the criminals in the streets, and then spend $10 billion that the city doesn't have and put 5 individual jails in a neighborhood near you.
And John, actually on the topic of moderate Democrats, used to call them blue dog Democrats. You said you were a fan of President Clinton when he was president. Joe Biden is kind of seen as the moderate Democrat nowadays. He has the moderate approach. What do you think about that? Is Joe Biden a moderate? Because some people would say
I know
he's actually
Joe
running
Biden
quite-
for 30 years. He's a very decent person. But he's lost it. There's something wrong. And the fact, and this is a fact, and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Pittsburgh has it, his son took $1 billion from the Chinese. He took a few $1 million from the Ukrainians. They're trying to get Donald Trump for high crimes and misdemeanor. What's more high crime and misdemeanor than allowing your son to take that money? And then, if you go back and do your research, how he treated the Chinese 6 months before they gave his son the money, and how he treated the Chinese 6 months after his son got the money.
So should Hunter Biden be the one being prosecuted, or should it
I
be?
don't know what the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to do.
So I guess the question is Joe
But he
Biden
took the money.
Yeah, is Biden, is he that moderate, or do you think he's
I think
slowed
he's a
down?
very
Or?
decent person, but I think he's lost it a little bit. You want to call it Alzheimer's? I don't know. I don't want to make accusations because I like the guy as a person, but I would not, if he made him president of the United States It's not him that's going to run things. It's going to be the people surrounding him.
So I got another question about that. President Trump has been talking on Twitter about, the Dems are trying to take it away from Bernie, the nomination. They're out
They're
there.
going to screw Bernie.
Now, do you think does he want to face Senator Sanders? Do you prefer to face Biden?
I think he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Do you think they're trying to take the nomination away from Senator Sanders?
I think the Democrats will, not Trump.
Well, that's what I mean. Do you think the establishment's out
They're
to?
going to screw him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
Dante, you want to follow
Did I
up one
wear
more?
you out?
No,
No.
Well, actually, I got a question, John. It's actually I would ask a question about Greece, specifically in Greece nowadays. And, we know.
Big problems.
Absolutely, yeah.
The
EU
Turks
and-
are moving the refugees into Lesbos, Chios, those islands. And you know what they did in Cyprus 50 years ago? They made the excuse that the Turkish Cypriots were not being treated right. They moved into one NATO country, invaded another NATO country, took over northern Cyprus and say, we're here to protect our citizens. There's possibilities going to do the same thing with the island of Lesbos and the island of Chios. And I don't think the current prime minister has the courage. I said to him, I had the ambassador of Greece here the other day in my office. I said, arm your citizens. If they're not tough enough to fight for their own sand, why should somebody else go and fight? Go and fight. Go and